Welcome everybody. No fancy song to start off this show. Also, no highlights in this show. For those of you that are very observant, you'll be able to pick up on when this video was done. This would be Saturday, and between a win against Long Beach State in overtime, that, again, just like the USC game, probably should have won in regulation, but whatever. Win, so we sit at 5-1, and before the ever-present dominant beating we're going to get from Boise, which I expect. I don't think Hillman's going to be able to play, and they're going to be pretty pissed after the TCU game. Special teams fails them again, so trying to sneak this in here, so got to make this as quick as possible as I haven't had the free time, partly because of this game here, as you can see with some of the guys in the NDL. As you can almost guarantee you can turn on your PlayStation at any time during the 24-hour period, and you'll see random people. Probably at least half your playlist or friends list was online playing Call of Duty at some point for the majority of the last 2 weeks. A week and a half it is, I guess. Yeah, so one of the games that has slowed down playing in the NDL, no surprise. A game everyone was looking forward to, most at least. You've got some that are taking a blast back in the past. You've got the Metal Gear HD collection, which came out last week. Still, you can go back a little further. You've got some people that really got into FIFA lately. So you've got people in the club play and still playing online against others in the league that Jay Simpson and the guys have going on down there. Still, others are just enjoying PlayStation time by themselves. Story in between games like Uncharted and the recently released Skyrim. And then, of course, there's still the other game, the alternative to Call of Duty. You've got Battlefield 3, which on and offline. So lots of distractors the last 2 weeks. Which brings me to an interesting article I read on IGN, kind of thinking about it, with Zelda coming out and also Mario for the 3DS. I vouch personally for Sonic being a good game, and because I got to play WWE 12 early, also believe that's going to be a much better game than people are expecting. So it's been a very, very busy holiday season, and I forgot Assassin's Creed, man. So many games have come out. Ultimate Marvel vs. Capcom, if you're a fighting fan. There's so much to play. It really just comes down to what you have the time for, the preference for. But to kind of go back to Buckeye's point when he opened up weeks 13 and 14, so the whole season being open, tomorrow there should be a timeline up on when the regular season deadline is going to end. But with so many games coming out, guys have gotten busy. Finals coming up. School busy with exams. We're almost there. The season's almost over. Just hang in there for another couple weeks. Get your games in, and then we'll all get the break that we're eagerly waiting for to do whatever it is that we do. Because I'm thinking probably no games until after Christmas. So plenty of time to just focus on football for another couple weeks, and then you'll have all the time to dedicate to whatever else you want to, PS3 wise. So there was a top 25 while I was blabbing away, and since I'm looking on the PS3, obviously it's not going to work just because it's going to frustrate me. Whatever. Anyway, this is the Massey for those of you that do not know, whether it's because you haven't been paying attention on the message board, which is understandable for the reasons I just mentioned, or if you just somehow haven't yet to come across this thread. Yes, the Masseys are out. Going down here, you can see highlight Florida. They are 10, but you can see the top 10 teams. You could also really see all of them. For those of you that don't know about the Masseys, that are new to the league or just haven't paid attention, it ranks every team from 1 to 120, so you can see where you fall on there. And also the divisions and conferences, for those that don't have divisions, are ranked as well based on their body of work, so something to look at. And then we also have, going a little further down here, least likely results. One of my favorite things to look at for a few reasons. One, Um, you get some very interesting games. Some that you just wouldn't really think about. And I'm not sure exactly how it's done, but it's a mathematic thing. But you can see that Buffalo beating Syracuse, a rank difference of 47. So big matchup there. But then you've got more. The UConn-Syracuse game, this was played a couple days ago. So you got UConn, Oklahoma, or UConn, Boise, USC, and Texas all losing. Those are all teams that were at least in the top 10. So that kind of explains partially why it's been such a crazy season. But if you go to the stats site and you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the Massey ratings down there. So feel free to take a look at your convenience. I'm not sure how often it's updated, but you should be able to tell from recent games played. So looking at the cup here as we narrow it down to the Final Four almost after Dave plays his game against Coug. Got two teams in from the ACC in Florida State and VTech, so congrats to those guys. Nebraska is the third, and we'll see what happens, but we're getting down to the nitty-gritty part of the cup, so good luck to Dave and Coug, and congrats to the three guys that are into the Final Four. So moving along, go to week 9. It's had no highlights, so just kind of browsing over games. You can see there Air Force and Arkansas picking up wins at home. LSU continues to struggle because they've been on a slump lately. Miami in a close win against Georgia Tech to avoid the upset on the road. What else we got? Florida State beating Maryland 16-7. Tulane beating Memphis as UL is getting comfortable in conference play. Nevada continuing to roll. Nebraska with the same. Bama picking up a road win against Tennessee. The big game to the right of that, Baylor beating Texas 24-23. So VVV gets knocked out of the unbeaten category, as did Dave, as we all know, by Pitt, and also UCLA by Arizona. An interesting note for those of you that didn't notice, all three of those losses were at home. So, and the fourth one, which will be coming up here, also Wisconsin losing to Michigan State. So Weasel being able to avenge his only regular season loss last season. But all 4 of those games were at home. Interesting. So I guess home field advantage doesn't matter as much as we tend to think it does in this game, though at times it can seem that way. And then you've also got some other things going on. Virginia Tech, Boston College, still trying to remain somewhat relevant in the ACC, with Miami and Florida State kind of trying to run away with that. What else? So still a lot of big games out there. West Virginia and Rutgers, talented, still hanging in the pitcher, so that's going to be a big one. See what he does. Arizona picks up a win against Washington, 3-0, a low-scoring game. Boise getting ready for their big matchup with TCU, continues to roll, 34-0. And what else we got here? Illinois, the 2-4, but winning record in conference, beat Penn State. Penn State struggling. Nebraska's on the road, lost to Michigan State, big division game, one that could come back to haunt them. UConn, another loss. Syracuse, 16-14. Hawaii, conference win, 27-20. VTech continues to cool down Duke as they lose again, 31-16. And Miami knocks Virginia from the ranks of the unbeatens. What a win. So that's it for the played games, and then looking at remaining games that need to be played for this week. Still got some big ones out there. And the one that jumps out the most is, to me at least, Florida and Georgia, for the obvious reasons. Still hunt for the SEC East, and then looking at Week 11, UCLA bounce back win against Arizona State. Miami, Duke's come back down to earth some, 48-14, tough matchup though. Nevada beating Hawaii 28-20, big win, which I will get to later. And T-Fan picking up a win on the road against Kansas State. So that's big in the big picture too. Get to that later as well. Baylor almost wasn't good enough against Missouri. They hang in there but can't pull out the win. Pitt bouncing back. Oregon continuing to sneak back into the picture. Dave and the game against Trendon. Who knows what the score was in that one, or how bad, or I shouldn't say the score, but how bad it was. But Dave picking up the win. And those are the highlights. We got Florida State, Boston College still on tap. BYU and Penn State. What else stands out? Mississippi State has some important games left. We'll see if they can get back into they will be able to get their game. If Outlaw will be able to play before. And then Boise and TCU. That'll be a big game. Texas Tech. That'll be a big game as well. I'm not seeing anything like really huge. Oh, well, West Virginia and Cincy. That should be big just ranking alone, but it's a muddled picture in the Big East. So every game matters right now out there in Week 12. Johnny P picking up a win with Eastern Michigan. Arizona State 28-14 in a win. Troy, big Sun Belt win for them, is trying to keep pace. What else do we have? Hawaii, a conference loss. Nevada, conference win against LA Tech, big game. Florida State beating Miami. So Plasma trying to inch his way back into the title picture. A big rival win, big conference win. They may meet again later. We shall see. South Florida, tough loss on the road to Notre Dame. And this would be the Missouri's loss. This on they lost on the road at least, so they can at least say that. Losing to Texas, as I remember the post saying negative 12 yards of offense by Crows, so struggled in that one. UConn bounce back win on the road against Louisville. And Virginia Tech, a home win against Georgia Tech as they try to bounce back. In Utah, don't want to forget that, Utah beating UCLA. So second loss for the Bruins. And looking at remaining games, Bama, important. Georgia and Auburn, every game for Georgia is important right now to try to keep pace with Florida and South Carolina. Boise and SDSU, probably closer in real life than it will be on the game. Or I'm sorry, other way around. And got Oregon and Stanford. That'll be a big game for Noel and for Steam. And that one huge. South Carolina, Florida as the winner that game could decide who wins the SEC East, and also in the big picture, it could decide if Florida is going to have a shot to play for a championship. Looking at stats here, just in general, you see UConn continues to dominate, and not a surprise. Two stats that are of note that some may want to look at: interceptions and quarterback rating. Not saying that you have to have a good quarterback rating or a low amount of interceptions to win, but it seems like there's a very nice correlation that goes with that for winning and losing. So something of note to take a look at. And I guess you could say in the same sense with rushing, is a lot of guys that have leading rushers are winning games, touchdowns or not. And just being able to keep the ball out the air and making the passing game easier. So running to open up the pass, or vice versa. In some cases, people have tried. Receivers, obviously Kemp is having a monster season with his 45 touchdowns, but Braxton is the leading guy in the nation with 12, as he leads in yards and touchdowns. Is up there in catches as well. Got a few tight ends up there. Got a running back up there in receptions, so something a little different besides all receivers. An offensive line, it's important if you want it to be. Defensive leaders, you see Elder with 86 tackles for Arizona State, so good chance of getting 100. I believe, with games played. I think still has some left. Pitt, I don't even know how to say that guy's name, but he has 20 sacks, and I'm sure that he has some hardware in his future because he's been a big part in helping lead a very stout defense in the Big East. Turnovers as well, you could see there. Kicking really is what you make of it. And this season got a couple players with double-digit kick returns, so that's cool to see. And punts, the last time I did a video, we had 2. This time we have 7. So a little different. Pretty cool. And now for the last thing I'd like to really take a look at, and that would be the standings, as we kind of see what's going to start to pan out here. So looking at the ACC, we'll first take a look at the Coastal Division, or I'm sorry, the Atlantic Division. Let me get it right. You've got Florida State sitting at 6-0 right now. Mathematically, the bottom 2 teams are eliminated in Wake Forest and Maryland. But the only game that matters is the game that's left for Florida State, and that's against Boston College. Boston College and Virginia. They win one, they win the division. That's simple. The easy way is beating Boston College, make it a non-factor in the Virginia game, but they're going to be ranked in the top 10, and they're going to move up in the ranks, so it will be helpful. And plus, their Massey rating will help as well, so they're looking at still contending for a title. The other side, you've got 3 teams still in the running: Miami, Virginia, and Virginia Tech. Yeah, I can't say too much. Well, North Carolina technically too. Miami can make this really easy for themselves. Truthfully, I kind of messed that one up. Miami has 1 game left. That's against Boston College. They win a division hands down. So all they have to do, that win against Virginia Tech helps. All they got to do is take care of business, and we'll get a rematch. So looking at the Big 12, you see Missouri sitting at 4-1. Texas seemed to have control after beating Mizzou, but then 2 conference losses moved them to outside looking in. And Kansas State still hanging in there. But the big game left is Mizzou against Oklahoma State. The loser gets loss number 2. Winner has the driver's seat. In the Big East, by just not having a loss, West Virginia, I guess, is in the driver's seat, as UConn has went from 2-0 to 2-3. So really, Pitt and Cincinnati. Pitt has a tiebreaker over Cincinnati, but South Florida has a tiebreaker over Pitt. So we'll have to see how South Florida finishes off the season, and also West Virginia, see what they do as the games get played. The Legends Division, Michigan, Michigan State, and Nebraska. Michigan plays Nebraska, I believe, in this block. Michigan State beat Nebraska. Michigan beat Michigan State. So we could somehow end up with a 3-way tie here, which would be kind of humorous. But that game looms big, as that gives someone a second loss, or it could give Michigan a second loss and really make things confusing. It also could put Michigan State back in the driver's seat. The Leaders Division, we'll have to see a few more games get played, but Wisconsin still in the driver's seat. Their loss was outside the division, so as long as they remain undefeated in the division, they'll be fine. Conference USA, got 2 guys undefeated. Central Florida hasn't played a game in conference, but East Carolina, Southern Miss still need a few more games played to kind of take a look at how this is going to pan out. On the other side, in the West, you've got 2 undefeateds in Houston and Tulsa, so obviously they're going to play a factor in how things go down the stretch. That game will matter. And then the game with Tulane's loss was to Tulsa, so that hurts in conference for tiebreaker, but they're not out the picture yet. 3-way tie could open it back up for them. And no offense to the Independents, but you guys aren't really a conference, so I'm not going to look at you, so sorry guys. Skipping over. Looking at the MAC, the East, as Nick predicted, as Nostradamusly as he could, he is leading the division at 6-1. Trenton is in last at 1-5, and you've got everybody in the middle. Only problem is Kent's loss. Well, actually, no, they beat Miami of Ohio. And did they beat Ohio? They lost to Indiana. Or no, wait a minute. In conference, they lost to Bowling Green. So actually, that's not a factor. He's won his division, so congrats to Nick. And looking at the other side in the West, Western Michigan's the only one without a loss. That could turn out to be could be a cluster of teams hovering around 500 in conference. Going to the Mountain West, obviously TCU and Boise have a game coming up. For those of you that did not catch that, that will be big. So by TCU being 4-0, I'm assuming that they already beat San Diego State. San Diego State and Air Force are on the outside looking in. Probably will need some help, depending on who loses that game. The back, the North, Oregon plays Stanford. I mean, really, that is the big marquee game that's left. No offense to Oregon State. So Oregon State still plays both, so they can still factor in. But for the moment, that is the next big game on the schedule. In the South, UCLA's losses have taken them slightly out the picture, or at least being in the driver's seat. They have a big game against USC at the end of the season, as we all know. But that loss to Arizona is probably going to hurt for a tiebreaker. The SEC, we've got Florida and South Carolina and Georgia. I believe Florida obviously has a driver's seat. They're halfway there. If they win out, they will be fine. They play both Georgia and South Carolina, so they control their own destiny. In the West, a really mixed picture. Some depends on if Mississippi State, if Outlaw will be able to play before the end of the season. Otherwise, Auburn and Bama in the Iron Bowl. Crap. Whatever. They have a game. That could decide, and I'm not sure Arkansas fits into that in case we have 3 losses, so I don't know. The Sun Belt, Troy and Western Kentucky both sitting at a loss on the outside. ULM has the inside track as they don't have a loss, and they have a win against Western Kentucky and Troy. So they went out, or they still can lose a game. Lost track of the timing in that, but in the WAC, as I was saying before I cut myself off, Nevada is in the driver's seat. They are 6-0 in conference. Hawaii and Idaho both have 2 losses. Actually, I take that back. Nevada's 1 because they beat both. So Nevada would be the WAC champs, as they have wins over both, and no one else can be in the picture. So congrats to Just Giver. Good season at 10-1. 1 game left, and he will be bowl bound. Who knows? Maybe BCS bowl bound. We shall see. With so many losses among the uppers. So pretty much that sums it up for now. The odds are, since the weeks for the last block are open, I will be paying attention to how Buckeye wants to end the season, and instead of doing I'll still do an end of season video. But I may see if I can spare some time and add in the highlights from this block. At the very least, I'll do an update before the end just to keep people updated on the standings. Probably throw some highlights in the games played in the 11-12 block and 13-14 block, at least if I can't go back to 9 and 10 as we near the end of the season and conference championship games. So, not bad. Quicker than I thought this would be, but no highlights. Makes it easy.